Sustainable apparel. Abstract. The apparel industry has had significant technological developments but is currently criticized for its environmental and social impacts and a vital contributor to waste. We want to highlight the growing trend of making textile and clothing from recycled plastics through this project. We will be completing the project broadly in 3 parts. In the first part, we will briefly discuss how the fashion industry is a significant contributor to environmental waste. Secondly, we will be discussing the topic textile and clothing from recycled plastics. What is it? Which is recycled are the plastics that are used to make clothes, the process behind how they are formed, benefits, and discussing about companies/brands that have already begun this practice. In the final part, we will discuss how clothes can be recycled and their benefits and uses. With the development in recycling technology in this field, plastic bottles can now be converted into light, comfortable, soft and breathable TLES that are best for stylish outfits, skirts, and blouses. Those who are fashionable and eco-conscious have an excellent option to explore trendy outfits made from recycled plastic bottles. Recycling materials consumes less energy than creating a new one. When one bottle is recycled, one can save enough energy to light a 60-watt bulb for 6 hours straight. As our environment is at greater risk and the people are becoming more eco-conscious, one can see a rise in recycled plastic fabrics for daily needs. Fashion industry contribution to environmental waste. Environmental impact of fashion. The style business is one of the significant dirtying enterprises in the world. The creation and appropriation of the yields, strands, and pieces of clothing utilized in design all add to contrasting types of ecological contamination, including water, air, and soil contamination. The material business is the second most noteworthy polluter of neighborhood fresh water on the planet and is blamed for about 1/5 of all modern water contamination. A portion of the principal factors that add to this modern-caused contamination is the massive overproduction of style things, the utilization of manufactured strands, and the horticulture contamination of design crops. Fast fashion. The measure of new pieces of clothing purchased by Americans has significantly increased since the 1960s. This outstanding increment causes additional assets and the requirement for a speedier cycle from which garments are delivered. One of the primary supporters of the quick creation of contamination is the fast creation of garments because of the immediate utilization of clients. Consistently, the world in general burns through more than 80 billion things of the dress. Those garments add to asset contamination and waste contamination because a large portion of these things will one day be tossed out. Individuals are devouring more, and they need it at less expensive costs. Also, the organizations delivering these modest things that make a benefit need the garments as quickly as could be expected. This creates a pattern called quick style. Quick style is a way to deal with the plan, creation, and showcasing of attire forms that stress making style rapidly and economically accessible to buyers. The thought is that rapid large-scale manufacturing joined with modest work will make garments less expensive for those getting them, subsequently permitting these quick style to keep up with monetary achievement. The primary worry with quick style is the garment's squander it produces. As indicated by the Environmental Protection Agency, 15.1 million tons of material attire squander was created in 2013 alone. At the point when material apparel winds up in landfills, the synthetic substances on the garments, like the color, can cause ecological harm by filtering the synthetic compounds into the ground. The abundance squander additionally adds to the issue of utilizing such countless destinations just to store waste and trash. At the point when unsold garments are singed, it discharges CO2 into the climate. According to a World Resources Institute report, 1.2 billion tons of CO2 is delivered in the environment each year by the quick design industry. In 2019, it was declared that France was putting forth an attempt to keep organizations from this act of consuming unsold design things. Textile and clothing from recycled plastics bottle to fiber. Introduction to green clothing. Sometime in the past, utilized plastic containers were a danger to the climate. Today, it is being utilized emphatically to fabricate pieces of clothing. Indeed, numerous individuals are wearing this green article of clothing produced using utilized water bottles. In the current situation of material contamination, picking green attire is an indication of being dependable and reasonable towards the climate. Green apparel alludes to textures that are gotten from feasible materials like hemp, bamboo, or reused plastic. Likewise, the strategies used to fabricate these textures are practical. There will be an impressive decline in the fossil fuel byproduct, in case there is a decrease in the utilization of crude materials, energy, and normal assets. One can pick such green apparel without settling on any think twice about decision or sign. There isn't a lot of contrast as for quality or surface between the garments produced using reused material and regularly made articles of clothing. It is demonstrated that reusing plastic decreases air, water, and land contamination. Hence, purchasing items produced using reused plastic jugs in a roundabout way help to establish a supportable living and climate. As per a report, 86% of plastic water bottles utilized in the U.S. are unloaded into the landfills. Around 60 million water bottles are day by day utilized in the U.S., which implies roughly 18,834,000,000 are unloaded in the landfills consistently. Additionally, every plastic restraint can take to 700 years to die. The disturbing rate at which the quantities of utilized plastic containers are expanding in the landfills, present high danger to the climate. How plastic bottles are converted into fabrics. It is hard to envision how plastic jugs are changed into textures. With the assistance of cutting-edge innovation, there is an interaction that can change over plastic containers into fabrics. Luckily, numerous organizations worldwide are approaching to reuse the waste plastic jugs and establish reasonable positions and climate. The subsequent stage is to shred the jugs into minuscule pieces and separate out the covers and marks from the jug material. The cap of a pop or water bottle is really an unexpected sort of plastic in comparison to the PET jug itself. After this, the destroyed material is dried. Fig. Bottle to fiber recycling process flow chart. Currently, it is the ideal opportunity for the destroyed pieces to begin their change into something that can be utilized once more. This occurs with a machine called an extruder. The plastic is warmed and constrained through small openings, which takes after something like a shower head to make filaments. The filaments are fine, long consistent strands. Then, they are attacked short pieces so the fiber isn't persistent strands. It's then, at that point, baled and is at last fit to be transformed into yarn. Now the fiber intently looks like fleece. The last strides in transforming the jugs into yarn would now be able to happen. This comprises of checking, which is a machine that adjusts every one of the filaments a similar way, and afterward a turning machine that really makes the yarn. Now the yarn can be woven into texture, finishing its cycle from jug to texture, making a helpful item out of something that can frequently get thrown into the junk. Collection of plastic bottles. The initial phase in the process is to gather the jugs that will be transformed into texture. This is clearly dependent on civil reusing programs. Sorting of plastic bottles according to grades. Arranging of plastic containers is a very significant step. The greater part of the plastic jugs are set apart with the number 1 to 8 within the three-sided image alongside PET underneath on it as indicated by the quality, grades, shading and so forth. Gathered jugs are arranged and isolated from different materials like PVC, HDPE, polypropylene, drink containers, glass, and so on are taken to reusing centers known as MRF, Materials Recuperation Offices. Post-buyer PET is regularly arranged into various shading parts, straightforward or uncolored PET, blue and green shading PET, and remaining portion into a blended tones division. At the point when the compartments are assembled, the sensible containers are secluded from the other concealed containers. Clear containers will make white yarn, and tinted holders will typically make green yarn, or whatever concealing the container was. Shading portions, straightforward or uncolored PET, blue and green shading PET, and remaining portion into a blended tones division. Arranging is done in both naturally and physically, where programmed strategies separate plastics from glass, metals, and paper. Here, clear PET and unpigmented HDPE milk bottles additionally recognized and isolated out of the gathered part. By utilizing the Fourier transform close infrared, FT-NIR, spectroscopy and optical shading acknowledgement camera frameworks, materials can be classified and figured out. Arranging execution can be boosted by utilizing methods including X-beam discovery. In the wake of devastating post-shopper PET waste, it is changed over into bundles for organizations and offers exorbitant costs for vapid/light blue than hazier blue and green portions. PET chips creation and washing. The arranged plastics are smashes, independent and dry by destroying the material into little sections that contain deposits of the first substance, destroyed paper marks, and plastic covers. Therefore unadulterated PET parts or PET pieces are delivered. It is utilized as a crude material for polyester texture making. Texture produced using reused polyester requires 80% less energy and 90% less water than virgin polyester that is made straightforwardly from oil. In washing, plants chips are washed. Just 2 to 3 cubic meters water per ton of material is needed to clean the chips. Be that as it may, cleaning advances are utilized to clean the surfaces through erosions without utilizing water. Drying process of PET flakes. PET drops are extremely touchy to hydrolytic circumstance during softening. Outcomes in unfriendly mechanical properties. In this manner it requires an exceptionally low dampness level before expulsion. There are distinctive drying cycles of PET drops are accessible subsequent to eliminating impurities, for example, dehumidifying and infrared drying. Here dampness level is completely kept up with dependent on parts per million, ppm, contained on chips to limit hydrolysis. Subsequent to drying, pieces are gone through an electrostatic separator, accordingly it could turn out to be liberated from metals from chips. Then, at that point chipped off the creation area to deliver the eventual outcome fiber. Soften, filtration and toxins expulsion. Expulsion of foreign substances from polymer softens is finished during expulsion in the dissolve filtration measure. A screen transformer machine is utilized to isolate foreign substances precisely from soften where impurities are put away on a hardened steel, called a breaker plate. An enormous opening of steel drill permits the progression of polymer soften easily and warmed, and redissolved if essential further. Resoftened of drops to change over yarn. In this part, PET jug chips are resoftened and gone through spinnerets, leaving them as fibers like manufactured yarn produced from virgin crude material. A cooling framework consequently cool the fiber reused polyester yarn. The length of the yarn relies upon the prerequisites and is utilized to produce texture both in the woven area and weave segment. In this manner, CVC, PC, and so on yarn likewise could conceivable to deliver by blending cotton fiber, called mixing. By adding shading during dissolving, hued yarn is additionally conceivable to produce. Coloring, getting done with, cutting, and article of clothing making measure are equivalent to if virgin polyester is utilized. Nature of reused yarn. The nature of the completed item relies upon the grades of plastic jugs utilized and the preparing of crude material. More up-to-date innovation applications during assembling would be an extraordinary development in reused bottles. Introduction. Material reusing is the way toward recuperating fiber, yarn, or texture and reprocessing the material into valuable items. Material byproducts are accumulated from various sources and are then arranged and prepared relying upon their condition, structure, and resale esteem. The outcome of this preparation can differ, from the creation of energy and synthetic substances to new pieces of clothing. Because of a new pattern of overutilization and wastage in worldwide style culture, material reusing has become a critical focal point of overall supportability endeavors. Most materials utilized in material reusing can be parted into two classes, pre-purchaser and post-buyer squander. Pre-consumer waste, pre-purchaser or post-modern waste comprises of material waste created at the mechanical phase of the creation of material. Regularly, these side effects are delivered by the material, article of clothing, cotton, and fiber ventures and are repurposed by the furnishings, home structure, auto, and different enterprises. Post-consumer waste, Post-purchase or waste comprises of disposed of pieces of clothing or family articles produced using fabricated materials. These undesirable articles are ordinarily exhausted or harmed. Some post-customer squander is guided towards recycled retailers to be sold once more. A portion of this waste is gathered in civil assortment receptacles, yet most of this waste is found in landfills. The dress brand The North Face presented a program called Garments the Loop in 2013 that permits customers to reuse post-buyer squander from any brand at any of their retail stores across the United States. This mirrors comparative administrations by noble cause associations like Goodwill Industries and the Salvation Army in the United States. Across the globe, magnanimous associations and organizations, for example, second-hand shops have made exceptionally checked assortment canisters that permit general society to discard post-buyer squander so it tends to be reused and repurposed. Process of recycled waste. Sorting. When reusing post-purchaser material waste, the arranging interaction is addressed as a pyramid model as far as the volume of material. At the foundation of the pyramid A and biggest volume A is unrefined arranging, trailed by exportation of recycled clothing, transformation to new items, cleaning and cleaning fabrics, landfill cremation for energy, and in conclusion precious stones. Ordinarily, inside the pyramid model, it is tracked down that the volume of dress things is conversely relative to its financial worth, besides implying that notwithstanding precious stones making up the littlest area, 1 to 2%, of the arranging interaction they will in general be the most productive. Crude sorting. Inside unrefined arranging, squander things are frequently physically isolated into particular classifications while additionally eliminating bulkier things, like covers and covers. The classes of material waste might be separated dependent on components like material, condition, quality, or apparel thing like shirts. Representatives with the most aptitude play out the most. Conscientious qualifications, for example, having the option to recognize cashmere from fleece by contact. Along the unrefined arranging measure, reused materials are likewise allotted categoric grades addressing their business esteem dependent on different fiber qualities like length, shading, and the homogeneity of its compound creation. Methods of textile recycling. Physical recycling. In physical recycling, manufacturing waste and post-buyer items are reprocessed into new items utilizing recovery measure or intermixed plastics squander preparing. Because of its less complex, less expensive, and all the more harmless to the ecosystem cycle, actual reusing is more positive than synthetic reusing. Chemical recycling. Synthetic reusing is to change over high subatomic weight polymers into low subatomic weight substances. The GOT substances can be utilized as the reactants for arrangements of different synthetic compounds and polymers. Reusing of material waste can fill in as a method for giving answers for some monetary, ecological, and social issues. Fiber recovery. Fiber recuperation implies the deterioration of the material into free filaments, which can be turned into a yarn once more. For the cycle, an alleged garnet machine is utilized, which comprises of pivoting drums with metal pins that annihilate the material design. The substantial mechanical strain brings about more limited fiber lengths than the length of the first strands, and a specific segment of residue is left in the material. A legitimate arranging before the deterioration interaction is anyway required, since a combination of various fiber materials and tones brings about bad quality yarn in the wake of spinning. About 95% of the recuperated strands are indeed not respun into yarn, yet are straightforwardly handled into nonwovens. Various types of nonwoven composite materials with crumbled cotton squander textures and a virgin polypropylene grid can be made. They showed that the utilization of waste cotton doesn't impact the material properties in a negative manner. In the event that the lengths of the filaments after the crumbling are excessively short, respinning into yarns is unimaginable. These strands are generally alluded to as flock. Flock is a term for short filaments that were created that way deliberately. While flock is generally created deliberately out of virgin material, finish-of-life materials can be thought of, for example, filaments recuperated after deterioration. Fiber run can be utilized to change thickness and stream properties in fluids or as an added substance in development materials. Short cotton strands, like rush, joined with natural slop from the wastewater treatment of material makers can be utilized to make briquettes for warming purposes. While this cycle isn't a reusing interaction any longer, it is a recuperation activity that will be liked over landfilling. Thermoplastic strands and filaments that can be broken down in solvents can be utilized for fiber respinning. Respinning implies that the finish of life materials are either liquid or broken up, and a while later, the arrangement or the liquefy would then be able to be utilized for spinning, actually like the virgin material. Not exclusively can end-of-life materials be utilized for this cycle, however, for instance likewise polyester bottles. The cycle can be practical for single material materials, however it has limits for the handling of multi-material apparels. While the fiber-to-fiber measure isn't that normal starting today, the bottle-to-fiber measure is normal practice for polyester bottles. All things being equal, virgin polyester has distinctive characteristic thickness, crystallinity, and murkiness than reused polyester, which can restrict the most extreme reused content in the items or could prompt further preparing steps and extra added substances for arriving at the right material boundaries. Fiber respinning is additionally feasible for normal strands, like cotton. For the refiber fiber of lensing AG, cotton filaments and wood are reused with the lyocell process, which is a cellulose recovery measure. Cellulosic material is first disintegrated in N-methylmorpholine N-oxide, NMMO, and afterwards squeezed through a spinneret into water or a watery NMMO arrangement, where it coagulates and frames another fiber. Benefits of textile recycling. Material and dress reusing can give old garments, cloths, and different materials a subsequent life. The recuperation of materials and attire for reusing gives both natural and financial advantages. It evades many contaminating and energy-escalated measures that are utilized to make materials from new materials. 166 International Journal of Home Science. Clothing and material reusing diminishes the requirement for landfill space. Synthetic fiber items won't decay in the landfill. Woolen articles of clothing do decay, however they additionally produce methane, which adds to an unnatural weather change. Dress and material reusing decreases tension. Virgin assets. Recycled clothing doesn't need the utilization of new material assets like cotton or fleece. Attire and material reusing energizes it. Advancement of extra business sectors. Raw materials made from reused content commonly cost less, making their utilization alluring and attractive to makers. This, thus, prompts the improvement of more business sectors for recovered filaments. Dress and material reusing saves energy. Decreases contamination. Recycling saves money on energy utilization when handling. In contrast to crude fleece, recovered filaments don't need to be completely washed utilizing huge volumes of water. Attire and material reusing decreases the interest for dyes and fixing specialists. This, thus, lessens the issues brought about by their utilization and assembling. Innovations in textile recycling. From denim to synthetic cartilage, normal, colored, or mixed filaments can be changed into different important items like counterfeit joints. The inventive cycle separates textures to their substance level. Denim was an undeniable beginning stage for the R&D project since it is produced using cotton, a characteristic polymer containing 90% cellulose. Cellulose is a flexible, sustainable material. Denim can be broken down with eco-accommodating fluid solvents and maneuver the remaining parts toward an aerogel. Aerogels are a class of cutting-edge materials with extremely low thickness, some of the time alluded to as frozen smoke or strong smoke. An aerogel with a novel permeable construction and nanoscopic burrows going through the example has been discovered. The denim cellulose arrangement is the thing that yielded a sensitive yet incredible aerogel structure undeniably appropriate for use as an engineered ligament. Undoubtedly, counterfeit knee plans have demonstrated fruitful. Aerogel can be used to form and tune them to make any ideal shape. Other potential applications: remember separators for cutting-edge battery innovation and layers utilized in water filtration frameworks. Sorting a garment per second. One major issue is the expense of arranging. It is work serious and presently requires everything to be gotten and independently surveyed for quality, style, piece of clothing type, market, and different properties. For utilized dress that has a worth, this is monetarily practical in case it is done appropriately. Be that as it may, the financial matters are problematic assuming you need to isolate out destroyed things by, for instance, fiber type and shading, particularly when a few items don't really contain the strands in the extents expressed on their names. One potential arrangement is the fiber sort innovation being created by Circular Economy in the Netherlands. This can take a blend of low-esteem materials which has not gone through a definite sort itself yet, which has been isolated from the excellent reusable things and afterward utilizing. When taken care of into the machine, the blended materials go through an optical identification framework which interprets the fiber blend of every material thing, prior to being passed along a belt and arranged naturally by a compressed air framework. This machine can sort one piece of clothing each second, around multiple times quicker than if done by a human. The optical identification framework can be aligned to sort materials into the distinctive wanted classifications and mixes of filaments. Additionally, in light of the fact that the framework is secluded, the quantity of classifications into which the machine can sort can be improved by extending the reusing line and expanding the quantity of arranging compartments. A passport for your clothes. It is so hard to sort out the things strands are in clothing, and surprisingly more hard to isolate these filaments and reuse them into new textures. The initial move towards enhancing the world's whole materials area is to make a savvy framework that permits us to follow the starting points of every individual piece of clothing. To this end, the Connect Fashion Global Initiative in mid-2019, works dependent on the new Circular ID standard and, as the name recommends, it makes a virtual reproduction of an actual item. The advanced identifier might be a QR code, radio recurrence ID or near-field communication ID imprinted onto or woven into the actual item. Through associations checking, tapping, or photography, the item's computerized profile can be gotten to. These advancements are similar ones used to store data on sticker prices for security and stock purposes. Not just printing the item subtleties on the name, yet rather installing them into the actual filaments. Joining a type of central processor into items will accompany negligible expenses. The new computerized ID can undoubtedly associate anything to the Internet of Things. In her imagined brilliant framework, the item subtleties like material structure, brand, date of offer and area become known to the important partners in the value chain. This will upgrade reclaim plans and reusing. The Circular ID likewise permits brands to revamp old articles of clothing and for recycled commercial centers to verify extravagance merchandise. It will presumably require quite a long while for brands all throughout the planet to accept the Circular ID framework. To prod them the correct way, the business person has made a huge data set, which is open source and is booked to go live in November 2019. It in this way presents a public norm for the business that all brands and retailers can receive. Billy system. What's novel about this office is the creative waterless framework which upcycles material waste. The licensed Billy line is predominantly mechanized and ready to measure as much as 3 tons of reused fiber consistently. The fiber can be additionally mixed with virgin material to deliver yarn for different items and pieces of clothing. Key stages. Material waste disinfection. Articles of clothing are refined through an ozone sanitization framework. The ozone is arranged as oxygen into the air. Equipment expulsion. Non-fiber items and trims from FedRes are eliminated physically. Programmed shading arranging. Managed textures are shipped off the camera to be arranged into 9 shading ranges by perusing shading reflections from the patterns. Fiber handling. The tone-arranged patterns are moved consequently by the automatic guide vehicle into our mechanical reusing measure, which stalls the textures into strands. UV light disinfection. the strands go through two-phase soft UV light sanitization. Bit handling, the 100% reused filaments are prepared into fragments. Chemical recycling breakthrough from Taiwan. FENC has fostered an across-the-board synthetic reusing answer for blended polyester materials. During the substance cycle, polyester is broken down, and the blended polymers or colors are sifted through. The detached cellulose is then changed over into energy. Thick fuel bars that can be utilized to create power. The new reusing strategy, which can likewise deal with spandex mixed polyester textures, has been introduced at the TITUS show in Taipei. The Keen Materials answer is named Top Green Artex. It shuts the circle of current PET reusing, redirecting what was once bound for landfills to esteem-added new shopper products. The EU-supported Resyntex research project has been chipping away at another synthetic reusing arrangement. Scientists have figured out how to change reused materials eno cements which can be utilized in the assembling of new wood-based boards for the deck. The soft approach. It is another approach that converts mixed textures into crude parts. Australian beginning up Blocktex has created innovation to isolate and recuperate polyester and cotton items like garments, sheets, and towels of any tone and in any condition. The arrangement yields high-esteem crude materials of PET and cellulose, supposed to be reasonable across all ventures. The recuperated PET is polymerized to make virgin-quality rPET plastic pellets and polyester fiber. These would then be able to be utilized in materials, bundling or building items. This imaginative soft division of fiber innovation measure separates cotton into cellulose powder, while the polyester is liquefied into a crude pellet of polyester chip. This yields an exceptional product. Cellulose can be ground down into nearly anything, from cements to toothpaste, or even once again into a tire. Blocktex's authors are planning to reuse in excess of 10,000 tons of polyester and cotton from Australia's post-buyer articles of clothing each year. Ross and Jones gauge this could diminish the energy utilized underway by more than half. Conclusion. The style world has accepted the idea of reused clothing from plastic jugs. Subsequently, it isn't unexpected to discover reused plastic articles of clothing in stores any place on the planet. Today, one can discover pieces of clothing makers utilizing PCR, post-shopper tar, and thinking of attire lines for men, ladies, and kids. Besides, the plastic turned string can be mixed with different filaments to make an assortment of apparel for each part of individuals. One can see a developing style of utilizing reused plastics in apparel like beachwear. It is encouraging to see this eco-cognizant design discovering a spot in the standard style world. Presently, plastics can be woven into numerous kinds of textures like nylon, polyester, spandex, acrylic rayon, artificial hide, false cowhide, vinyl, polyurethane, and so on. These textures are broadly utilized in making style articulations in the design field. With great development in recycling technology, plastic bottles can now be woven into soft, light, breathable, and comfortable apparels that are best for stylish outfits, skirts, trousers and blouses. For people who are fashionable as well as eco-conscious, they have a good option to explore trendy outfits recycled from plastic bottles. Recycling process consumes less energy compared to making a new one. In this process, one can save enough energy to light a 60-watt bulb for 6 hours straight. As our environment is at greater risk and the people are becoming more and more eco-conscious, one can see a rise in the usage of recycled plastic fabrics for daily needs.